So Martin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how you started to paint?
I forgot my height and I forgot my weight, but um, that's been shrinking recently, but that's okay. I was born in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and in the 1960s, and that time there was, much like you can find in New York in those days, enormous creativity everywhere. So I was involved with my parents, who were musicians. My father was a painter, he was an art teacher. And it was a good level. I could walk to the museum, I could walk to the, which is here in Chicago, is the Symphony Orchestra anytime. They're very cheap. Anyway, so you can see.
So how long have you been painting?
Well, I rather say I never stopped.
Okay.
Because a lot of kids stop around age somewhere between 10 and 14 because of peer pressure, which is ridiculous because it cuts you off from learning how to see, just like learning how to read and write. So with my background, that never happened. So I even paint when I'm not painting. Right now, you're talking to me, I see that tree. I can't help looking at that tree. That's really true.
Yeah. Yes, that's what we do as artists.
Yes.
Yes.
So when I'm not painting, I'm thinking about it.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose oil paints as opposed to any other medium?
Oil paint is a lot of time consuming. So it came very late. And it was funny because I grew up in a family with a lot of art, but my father never said to me, who was a painter, let's go see how you use oil paint. But I knew in the expression, I felt it was the most rich. It gives you, as many artists say, very forgiving because it takes time to dry so you can play with it. You can do all kinds of things with it. And the color is very intense. That's the reason.
Oh, okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your process, how you get started on a canvas and, what your layers are?
Yeah. First of all, I would love to paint outside. There is no comparison to that. But because of restriction from surroundings or time or family, I unfortunately end up using photographs. And the best I find is to combine both. Start outside, work there, and then if you want to, add something to it, change something to it, maybe you can. A lot of times, sometimes it's even good to stay away. But when I work from photographs, then I just have to have a good photograph. That's the first thing. So composition and all those things, I try to solve it there.
And I noticed with your work that light is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, that is very important. And that's the exciting thing about oil paint, to find the right color. It looks very spontaneous when you look at a Monet or when you look at even an abstract artist, when it is a painting that appeals to you. But, just like mother who cleans the kitchen looks very clean and everybody thinks it's fine, but they only say something when it's very dirty. And then you got to work. So you don't see the work that goes on behind it. So the colors. I always want to paint something in a landscape with sunshine and work with the shadows. And I try to add a lot of shadows to it because that, I think, is what gives the freedom for the artist to make the light come alive. And it's amazing.
I noticed that you use a lot of texture on your canvases.
That comes because oil is so nice to me. It doesn't disappear. And eventually, you can add a spat of paint with thick oil on top of it, and then you just let it sit there. That's because I go layer after layer. It just happens because of the subject, the way it is. And
But you also use gesso on your canvas to give it to start off with a little texture, don't you?
depends on if I want to do it or not. But I many times, for example, with trees where the leaves are very loose, it's wonderful to have an uneven surface to some degree, because instead of trying to scrubbing every leaf for leaf, which is impossible, you can get some natural effect.
Can you take us to one of your
So
tree
that would be
paintings?
this one, for example. But even here, after a while, trying to put in this, trying to put in that, then you can see here the breaking of the surface, which then gives that kind of energy that you would not get in a photograph. And because it is done through the artist, you look at a painting, unlike with a photograph, and you kind of feel almost as if the hand of the painter himself is alive in it. So there's more happening in the painting because the intensity of your emotions are put into it. And whether you like it or not, if you look at a person and you see their facial expression, you say, what's wrong? Because you can see from their facial expression because of their emotions. And I believe that even though we look at oil paint as just oil paint, from my experience, and even intellectually, I could go on forever with that, like that even material has an element of emotional response to human being. The best example that I can give you is, for example, if somebody serves you dinner and just smacks the dinner on the plate, you just feel like, ugh. Well, the same food can be served in a very clean way. And the difference is very important because what you think about becomes a part of you. So that's why I think that the breaking up of things gives a more organic feeling with everything. So that combines with trying to make it exactly look like a tree. The combination between the two is what I think is the punch. Sort of like tuning a guitar, and if you have two notes and they're a little bit off, then ow, it hurts your ear. A little bit better, it's the right tune.
I noticed that most of your work is outside.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever do portraits, internal?
Yes,
interiors?
I have a lot of portraits.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I started out that way. But because I'd like to push it into the direction of landscapes, that's why I didn't show them. But I have wonderful portraits that I did for quite well-known people, and I love it to do it. But it's a whole different world, portraits, and I find the landscape more appealing.
For you, it's
For
more
me,
interesting.
yeah.
for
I mean,
you.
I can make people happy. They want to do a portrait. And I'm happy that they're happy when I do it. So that is fine,
Right.
And sometimes that is gratifying for sure. Because making people happy is a part of the art. if somebody is really excited about it, that is actually what we need.
I noticed that you have a similar color palette in each of these paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your choice, or is that based on?
I started painting, actually, the first person who taught me the art painting is the person somebody know at Harvard College, believe it or not, Sally Mason, continuing education. She's not there anymore. And I still use her palette, and I like it. One thing, I don't use plain red. And I believe, there's no rule for art that you can't use that. But I try to keep it out. And so I use a softer red, like an orangey, and alizarin, and that's how far I can go. That's one thing. And another thing with color range, I somehow feel always blue and purple have a very integrating, helpful element.
Yeah, they're very dynamic together.
Yeah, they help, and they help me with the lightning, like you say, the color of the lights play around with. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Martin,
All right.
and we appreciate this.
Thank
Thank
very
you.
much.
And now I would like to introduce another artist, Sharon Boxenbaum. Sharon's going to speak a little bit about her work.
Thank you, Jackie. So I am an artist who has been working a very long time. My mother was an artist, so we always had an easel and paint set up in our basement. And when she was not working, I was always welcome to go down there and put on my own canvases and paint, and this is from a very young age. And I was also sent to private lessons starting at, I think, around 8 years old. I was dropped off every Saturday at a school and given lunch money to go around the corner to eat at a diner. And other than that, I thought that everybody did that. I thought that was very normal, but apparently it wasn't. I found out later on. But yeah, she's always been very invested in art and made me feel very invested in art. We went to all the major shows at the Art Institute, and she just really gave me her love of art.
Let's start over here. And can you tell me, why animals first?
Sure. So actually, I'm not really an animal artist per se. These were actually the first animals I've ever painted. What had happened was there was a group of us who went to paint at Cabela's. And that's a sporting goods store that also has quite a bit of taxidermy and examples of all different kinds of animals from all around the world. And I started out choosing the rhino. A lot of people chose very cuddly and furry animals, but there was just something about the rhino that spoke to me. And I stood in front of it. I wanted to portray its dignity and its energy, and I'm personally not in favor of hunting beautiful animals like this, but being there gave me the opportunity to be live in front of an animal I never normally would be able to paint in person.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a real opportunity, and I just had a lot of fun. This is actually, both of these are acrylic, and that's my secondary medium of choice. Typically I'm in oils, but for some reason that day I just chose to bring acrylics, and it gave me a lot of opportunity to be very quick, spontaneous, and expressive with color. Whereas with oils, I think it's a little bit harder when you know you have a limited time and you haven't been in a place before. And it ended up working out to my liking very much. And in fact, the store was very excited about this rhino portrait. Everybody was coming by to see it. And I it led to me thinking that I would like to paint more at Cabela's. And so I called up their community person and I asked if I could be an artist in residence. And so I have gone back several times to paint other animals. I painted the elephant and another animal. And I was in the middle of their big moose on the first floor, and then coronavirus hit. So unfortunately, that had to be on hold a little, but now they've opened up again, I understand. So I hope to go back and capture more of the animals. There's just something about being there in person and standing in front of these magnificent beasts and kind of trying to mentally have a conversation with them and kind of get to know their personalities and, based on their size and their type of skin they have or fur, what they've gone through. I know the elephant is actually not a real animal. That was a model they had built, but the rhino is real, and it all depends on the laws around who is extinct or not. So I guess the elephant is one they're not allowed to bring in, but certain other animals, I guess they are, based on what hunters have captured. So very interesting.
So what does Cabela's plan to do with the paintings that you've created from there?
There's no real relationship there yet. I would like to come up with some kind of business plan and maybe share it with them down the road. What I wanted to do is get a good collection of them first, like maybe a dozen paintings. But I just think they're a lot of fun. I think they're a different way of looking at animals, bringing in some of these colors and maybe show a little empathy for the animals and some of them, how they're growing extinct now and how we think of them and have them in zoos or hunters killing them. I don't know. I have a great empathy for them and want them to be free and wild and live their best lives. So I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword going to Cabela's and witnessing them there, but it also, like I said, gives me an opportunity to portray them in a real setting where I can get close to them and examine them.
Okay. So how did you choose this particular color palette?
It's funny. I started here and I just didn't want a gray painting. I just didn't want a gray rhino. I wanted to bring some energy into it. And I felt like he had such a commanding presence. Like he was really commanding that corner of the room. And I felt like he deserved some energy and some strong lines and directionals. So I guess it just kind of came out of me and onto him. Like I said, this is the first animal I've ever really attempted to paint before, and it just kind of happened spontaneously, and that's what's so fun about art.
Oh, I love the energy and the brush strokes that you've got there. It does bring him to life.
Thank you.
Was there anything about the elephant painting that you wanted to share?
Well, I think I particularly like the elephant's texture on his skin and also his eye. I think there's a story to tell there. I think I feel like, this elephant, if it were to have been a real elephant at one time, had a whole life maybe in Africa and a family and, a day in the life of moving around, the big slow way they move. And I don't know, I think elephants are fascinating just by their sheer size. And to me, they strike me as kind of a gentle giant, unless they're provoked. So I kind of wanted to give him some humanity and some kind of soul in his eye.
Yes, I think you accomplished that in both of those paintings.
Thank you.
These paintings over here, though, are greatly different.
They are. So really, mainly these two are oil, and I love working outdoors. I am a plein air artist primarily, and the reason is I don't enjoy working from photographs at all, particularly if there's somebody else's photograph. For me, painting is very experiential. I need to live it, be close to it, and sit there and kind of commune with it mentally before I start something. So for example, this was done in Crabtree Nature Center. It was a very, very cold day in winter. And I was out there, it was crisp, it was cold, there was snow everywhere, and very few people. And I remember when I was painting this, there was a V flight of ducks that flew, or geese that flew overhead. And one of them dropped a seed that landed right on the painting. And it just felt like this cosmic connection to nature. And I think you can see my strokes are very jerky. Well, I'm standing out there and I'm shivering and I'm cold and I'm experiencing this. I mean, this is all part of the plein air experience. I want to be feeling all that as I'm painting. The other thing to say is that these are both, or this one actually is a palette knife painting. And I love painting in palette knife. It's just a very different experience than paintbrushes. It feels like almost more of an extension of my arm when I'm using a palette knife. It takes away the variety of brush sizes or the brush shapes. It's just kind of a spade that I stick with the whole time. And I don't know, it just allows for a very different kind of expression on the canvas. So I really enjoy using a palette knife. But yeah, it was just a cold, crystal clear day. I could hear the animals around me. I could hear, the wind blowing through these kind of silhouettes of trees and the ice crackling. It's just very experiential. That's what I love about painting, is being in that moment and then trying to express it so that when the viewer comes, hopefully they could feel that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then on this one, it's funny, I was looking for something to paint in my yard because of COVID. I'm not going very far. And I had planted hollyhocks 3 years ago, the real $7 little plants from the Jewel. Never thought they'd really take off, but they did. And I had pinks and purples on one side and reds on the other. And this was already late. The pinks and purples had gone, and I didn't expect to still see red when I rounded the corner to the side of my house. And I was just so shocked and surprised. I'm like, wow, I need to capture these. So I grabbed my easel really quick, got out there. It was late in the day, so I didn't have a lot of time to paint before I would lose really good lighting. And it was just such a pleasure. I just got out there and was real loose about it. And I hope the feeling of organic looseness and the expression of those hollyhocks comes through. It was a lot of fun.
So is light important to you too?
Absolutely.
Where the sun.
And it's interesting. I always thought that you really, as a plein air painter, should be only painting on sunny days. But I was at a lecture recently, and the artist said he actually preferred overcast days for the opportunities they gave to give richer colors. So I thought that was a very interesting idea. So it kind of realigned my thinking about lighting, that it doesn't always have to be a sunny day. This was kind of on the side of my house, so that's the side where there's shade. So there's not a real lot of light hitting these in terms of sunshine. They're kind of in shade, but I was still able to find some light and dark variations in that, just from the way the petals were turning and the leaves were turning. So, but it kind of realigned my thinking now, so I don't feel like I always have to wait for a sunny day.
You work full time, don't you? So this is
I do.
Tell me how the two work together.
It's a real challenge. I mean, I'm a right brain girl at a left brain job, and that can really be tough because I want to be creative all day long. I'm a doodler whenever we're in long meetings. It's always hard for me not to be creative. But I paint on weekends. I paint in the morning. I paint at night. Sometimes if I work full time from home, sometimes if there's a break in my day at lunch, I will run out to Crabtree and do a quick painting. I'm actually a very quick painter. My friends always joke about that, but they'll just be setting up their paints and I'll almost be done with my painting. But I like to think for a moment, get the idea in mind, and then jump in and create a painting.
I guess if you're a plein air painter, you have to paint fast.
You do, because the conditions do change. But I like that. I like the energy. I like to just throw out a bunch of colors on my palette. And I don't have a set color palette. I just kind of grab different colors, whatever seems to suit the mood of the subject, throw them out. And I'm always interested in trying new colors, new color combinations. So I love to mix color, and I feel like that's one thing, if there's anything I could say about my natural ability, it's color mixing. I feel like that's something that's never been hard for me. It's something that feels very innate in me for some reason. I don't know.
You grew up with it.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I grew up in a home that only had my mother's paintings on the wall. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun.
I'd like to introduce Ann Parker, a very dear friend of mine and who helped me get my start in painting.
And the interesting thing is that I am not a cradle to grave, well, not quite yet, painter. I really started painting when I retired from teaching about 20 plus years ago. As a kid, I thought I'd be a writer. And so every day I'd be writing something. And none of it was any good, fortunately, because it was peculiar. But the painting came because after I retired, I took up a lot of things, a little tennis here, a little golf there. And I thought, I'll go to Harper and take a drawing class. Well, they canceled the class. So I was riding through Lake Zurich one day, and there was what did it say? Lake Zurich Main Street Art Center, spelled CENTRE. And I thought, isn't that cool? So I stopped in there, and the rest is history. They gave me not only art lessons, but drawing lessons, and I formed a lot of wonderful friendships. So as you can see from my art, it's I don't know how to explain it. I do both brush and palette knife. This was actually a beautiful bouquet that one of my children sent to me. And I just picked it apart and put in things that weren't there. But I like the colors. I always like to use very rich colors. So that turned out okay. This was another one. There were, let's see, probably a bouquet of 15 to 20 different kinds of flowers. And I just picked out ones that appealed to me. And I used the colors to try to stress the difference and the similarities. And again, it was both brush and palette knife. I'm very comfortable with those. And I use a lot of colors directly from the tubes. I like the sap greens and the bright reds. So whether it's good or not, I don't know. But I don't have, years and years and years of experience. So if it turns out nicely, then I'm very delighted. This was done, both of these were done when I was in Door County. I went up to Door County for a class, several classes actually, and I went with Jackie, my good friend, and we had a great time. But there was a pathway leading to the studio. And so we did some plein air, which I enjoy. I don't do it as much anymore because it's a lot of stuff to cart around, to make sure you have everything. So this was a plein air. This was more like what it looked like. This was a path, and it was leading off out to the far reaches of the property to the studio. And then this, because I like the shapes, I just did this just as fun, just as color and pulling things together. And I'll use both my own photographs, someone else's photographs. If I see a color that strikes me, I'll try to duplicate it sometimes on my canvases. So I'm not hesitant about doing that. A lot of times I did plein air, and then I would take it back to my home or to art class and finish up the work that I had started. What else can I bring into play? I enjoy it. It was really hard when COVID came because I was afraid to go to the studio and go do my art with other people. But I finally have braved myself enough that I've gone a couple of times now, and they take special precautions. So.
Okay.
You mentioned you were a teacher, and how would you encourage young people to follow their passions in art?
In art, interesting. Well, I didn't teach art. I taught literature and French, but I would encourage them just to find something that they love and to try to put it down on paper and give them the option of using oils, which I love, or watercolor, which I think is beautiful, acrylics, just about anything. I even like pastels. I think that, everything has its place and everything looks gorgeous to me. And I'm another one who, whenever I'm outside, was looking at the clouds and thinking, what? I bet I could do that. I bet I could recreate those clouds and make them look so beautiful. So encouraging the kids, it's just encouraging kids to do anything.
Yeah.
Now I have 3 children, all married, 10 grandchildren, and nobody does art, not a single person. So that's okay. That's okay. So they'll take all the extra pictures off my hands and hang them in their houses, which is nice.
What do you find is success to you as an artist?
When I can look at a painting, like one of these, and say, oh, I really like that. I think I'd like to hang that in my living room or my bedroom or my bathroom or wherever it might be. So that's probably success. I have sold a few unbeknownst to me without trying, because people probably are like I am. They see something and they think, oh, that might look good in this corner of my study or something. So that's been interesting. I don't feel that I'm always on show, to have to perform something. And if any of these hadn't turned out, I would have just looked over them and just started another picture. And I wouldn't have felt bad at all.
Do you work at home?
Well, I did this during the COVID. I set up my dining room table and I had everything out. But now that I've gone back to going to a class, I was able to put most of it away, which is nice. Otherwise, no, once a week, whether I needed it or not. No.
Is it easy to part with your paintings when you do sell them?
Well, usually they're the ones you like yourself.
Right.
So then
Yeah.
it is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you do it if somebody really wants it.
Right.
So
What inspires you to paint a particular
just
thing?
anything. Well, I love flowers because I love the colors and I love the possibilities of what you can do. I do have some that traditionally have a vase, and then they have some oranges, some pears, and those are beautiful too. But I like this kind of unstructured kind of creating.
You have a very impressionistic style to you.
Yeah, I think Monet and I are good buddies.
Well, thank you so much.
Well,
Anna.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Anne.
I enjoyed it.
The 3 artists showcased tonight, along with Barb Ross and myself, Jackie Smith, are members of the Barrington Area Artists Association. In 2009, a group of local artists envisioned an environment where artists of all levels would be welcomed, celebrated, and encouraged to create and grow in their chosen areas of the arts.
11 years later, the focus of our group is supporting visual artists, and our numbers continue to grow. We participate in local art walks, local art events, workshops, artist critiques, and monthly plein air outings. This week, you may have spotted some of our members outside as they paint local landmarks throughout the downtown area as part of the Paint the Town Barrington event. This event will culminate in an exhibition of works on Saturday, September 19th, right here at the Barrington White House.
Later this fall, several of our artists will partner with Downtown Village merchants to decorate storefront windows for the holidays.
Barrington Area Artists Association is an all-volunteer, not-for-profit organization. Our group is looking for a permanent space in the village, which will be used as a gallery to showcase our members' works, a space to hold workshops and events, and a place for members of our community to gather and share their creativity.
Thank you for joining us this evening. For more information about us, please go to our website at barringtonareaartists.org.